What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Bridging the Gap here on the Jersey First TV network. I'm sorry, guys. For some reason, I couldn't hear our intro playing, so I had no idea when to start talking there, Steve. So, welcome back to another episode here on Bridging the Gap. As always, I'm AJ Malillo.
And I'm Steve Romola.
And if you can't tell, folks, it is prime final season for Steven and I. So things are just not going as smoothly as usual. So just like deal with us for a second here. You can check us out on Jersey First TV. YouTube channel where you can hit that notification bell and subscribe. You can check us out on jerseyfirst.org where you can sign up for our newsletter and sign the pledge. And you can always check us on demand anytime at onnj.com. And although it's a rocky start to this week's episode, I think we have a great one ahead of you. But before we get to that, Steve, what's going on? How you doing?
I'll tell you what, it is certainly true that this is the thick of it for finals. I have been pretty relentless in my studies. I'm hoping that it is going to produce great results for me. I have my first final coming up on Monday. I've been, no joke, at the school every day. I get here about somewhere between 9:30, 10 o'clock, and I've been leaving around 5:30, 6 o'clock. I go, get physical, get moving, handle my gym stuff, and then I do some more studying at home. So it is like the only thing that I am going to be doing for the next 2 weeks is reading, watching videos, taking practice exams, cooking and eating and sleeping. And that's it. That's my life. And I got to say, I know we were talking about this earlier, how you said you really enjoy reading week. I am also really enjoying it because it's giving me the flexibility to relearn some of this material in a way that's productive for me, and I find that to be really rewarding. And it's also cool because I've been in class with a lot of these kids. I have 47 kids in my class. I talk to every day. I'd say probably 6 of the same kids. That's the little crew that I'm with. Since reading week started, I think I've spoken to everybody in the class because everybody's walking around. They're like, "Hey, do you know about this? Hey, what's this? Can you help me on this?" And it's definitely, there's good camaraderie. It's a lot of fun. It's definitely stressful. However, I'll manifest this outward into the universe. I'm not too stressed because I know the quality of work that I'm putting in. I know the amount of studying that I'm doing. And I know as long as I keep a level head and hit the things that I need to hit, I'm pretty confident in my ability to do well on these finals. And I set myself up pretty well throughout the course of the semester to not really need too much to happen on these finals to at least get a passing grade. But we don't come here to pass. We come here to excel. So the bar's
There you
still
go.
very high.
I
But
like it.
overall, I'm
Sounds good.
feeling really good about it. How's reading week going for you?
Same thing. I mean, just kind of taking it day by day. I don't have my first exam until next Thursday, and then I have two the
Ooh.
following week. So I have a lot of time here. It's like I got two reading weeks. So I'm kind of, I wouldn't say that I'm taking it easy, but I'm not like super grinding as much as I did maybe at times last year. I'm taking it a little bit slower, working in a little bit different chunks, making sure that I'm taking time to absorb the information and then also prep myself and get myself in the proper headspace that I need to be to really excel on the exams, and taking it a little bit more of a totality of the approach, not like full grinding and focusing on the minutia, very, very general areas here this week so far. So pretty good, if I have to say. And we'll see how it works out come next week when I'll be really in the thick of taking practice exams and going crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, we're about to have 2 very different weeks. My first final will be on Monday, and then I have one that Friday. I have a wedding next Saturday, so I have final few days, final wedding, 3 days, another final, and then I booked my ticket to come home already. I'm home the day after my last final. I miss it so much. I know
There
it's
you go.
crazy because I'm sitting outside right now. It's 73 degrees, and I'm certain that that is not the case in New Jersey. However, my heart is up there, and I got to get back. I can't wait.
It's not too bad today. It's been bad. It snowed the other day, but today
That's crazy.
it's like 50 degrees. It's pretty nice. It's not too
Okay.
terrible.
All
Um,
right. I'm
but yeah,
excited either
so
way.
yeah, it's exciting to have you back. I'm excited too. I can't wait for the little bit of a break and then hanging out with you back up north. It'll be a good time.
Yeah. Get a few in-person episodes done.
Exactly, exactly. But look, we do have some things to get to today. So, Stephen, I think you got our first story over there. What do you got?
Yeah, so this is pretty interesting. Something that's definitely going to affect our friends up in North Jersey. So, for a while now, this has actually been in the plans for over a decade. There's been discussions, negotiations about how this plan's exactly going to get implemented. And it looks like we are as close as we have ever been to the first congestion pricing program in the entire United States is about to take shape in New York City. So, what this means, what this is all about, essentially, the governor of New York has been a pretty ardent supporter of this, as has Joe Biden and his administration for reasons which we'll get into. But ultimately, what this plan is looking to do is any car that is traveling south, below of 60th Street in Manhattan, is going to have to pay a once a day toll fee of $15 to drive on Manhattan's busiest streets during the busiest times of the day. Commercial vehicles are going to have to pay as much as $36 to get into this area of the city. Taxis are going to have to add about $1.25 per fare, and rideshare applications like Uber and Lyft are going to tack on an extra $2.50 per share. So these program is still in negotiation. It's in its final stage of negotiation. It's expected to get voted on by the Metropolitan Transportation Authority next week. But this has some pretty serious implications for commuters in North Jersey who work in the city. There we go. Beautiful, beautiful diagram. So this is courtesy of the New York Times, and this shows exactly where this congestion pricing is. And if you are familiar with the island of Manhattan at all, you recognize that that is basically the most meaningful parts of what we colloquially call the New York City. So it's assumed, and there's certain motivations behind this, that this is going to bring in about $1 billion a year for the MTA, which they're saying there's going to go to redeveloping and refurbishing the subway system, which if you've ever been on a New York subway, is certainly something that could use a touch up, maybe past due for a touch up. But other reasons for this, it appears that they are claiming that by lowering the amount of vehicles that are going to be traveling through, the lower part of Manhattan, it's going to reduce pollution in the Manhattan streets. It's also going to reduce traffic, reduce congestion, make it safer for pedestrians and bikers and all that, since there'll be less cars on the road. But ultimately, at the end of the day, as noble and as great as those initiatives are, and this is a revolutionary program. It is the first in the country ever that's going to be implemented like this. So we'll have to see how it goes. But off the rip, to me, if I was somebody who lived in North Jersey, somebody who commuted, one of the 8 million people that, hangs out on this tiny little strip of land every day, I would be pretty upset to find out that it's going to cost me $15 every day, potentially to get in my car and drive to work. And if you don't drive to work, that's pretty reasonable. It's a tough city to get around in. But if you're using apps like Uber, Lyft, or you're catching taxis, it is generally just going to become a more expensive endeavor to travel around an already expensive place. So I understand, the intention behind this. You want to reduce traffic, that's fine. Maybe less traffic fatalities. Cool. The argument about pollution, I think, is pretty I think the argument about pollution is kind of like marginal. I don't really know how much that's going to do. I think it's one of those feel good arguments that they're making. But ultimately, this is going to burden the people who are coming outside of New York to work in New York. And New Jersey actually filed suit against the MTA back in July over this plan, alleging a bunch of different things, which I don't necessarily think are worth getting into in this discussion. But ultimately, the point being, if you work in Manhattan, if you travel into Manhattan, it is going to become a more expensive endeavor for you. And it's nothing that you have a say in. It's nothing that, you as a non-resident of New York City can really even do. It's just something that you're going to have to accept. And I think that I have a fundamental issue with that because, again, New York City, you're talking 8 million people on the island of Manhattan every day, a lot of whom aren't residents. I'm not going to say a majority, but a lot of whom aren't residents, that this is going to directly affect their ability to navigate comfortably, economically comfortably inside to the city, to get to work, to get to whatever event. Maybe you're going to catch a Knicks game at MSG, and then all of a sudden it just got more expensive for you. If you're a commercial business and you're driving trucks and you're paying $36 a truck, that's a ridiculous, ridiculous fee to just get into the place. It's like a cover fee at a bar on a Friday night. You're paying $20 just to get in. And I think that those things are, like I said, as noble as their initiatives are, what they plan to spend the money on, I'd have to say, let's see if that actually happens. How long have we been hearing that these reforms are going to happen for the subway system, for public transportation in New York City? And it is consistently to no avail. So I think that what's the term I want to use here? I think that the opposition to this is pretty well founded. Listen, I'm down to try it out. I understand why they want to try it. And listen, if it does achieve their goals of reducing traffic, reducing pollution, making it easier to navigate, safer for pedestrians and bicyclists and, other motorists on the road, then I think maybe it's a noble cause. But $15 is pretty steep. And I also think it's worth noting, when this budget was originally being proposed, the lowest amount of money that they had offered initially was about $9, and the upper limit on that was $30. So 15 is considerably low given the scale of what they were proposing, but I still think it's a pretty ridiculous amount of money just to get into lower Manhattan.
I would say it's a lot of money, and also to get into Manhattan in general is expensive. Like any part of Manhattan, if you're coming in from New Jersey, every single way you get in, you're gonna hit a toll. And where is that money going? Why aren't you like, how is that money not really upping the infrastructure and going to these public transportation? I feel like every time you have an initiative like that, they say the same things like, oh, it's going to increase public transportation and public transportation is going to get better, but it just doesn't seem to get any better. And public transportation isn't exactly cheap to do every single day either, right? There are other cities in the United States that have free public transportation in parts of their city. I know that Miami is like that, where you don't have to pay to get on rails in Miami, and the rails are safe and clean and better than New York, right? So it's like, where is the money that you're already getting for these things going? And I think that that's like a fundamental issue that you have with government programs like this in general. It's like, okay, maybe I would be fine with you taking some more money if I could see where the original money that you're already taking is going. And if I'm not seeing any benefit from the original money that I'm already giving you, then why is it okay for you to take more? Show me why it was okay for you to take the beginning stuff by doing something. And then maybe we can have a conversation about you taking more.
This
I
is a great point.
I know that, like, if you're talking about Port Authority, a lot of that money goes to pay people in Port Authority a lot of money, right? It
Yes.
it doesn't go to necessarily making Port Authority better for consumers and people that are using it as transportation. And so is that the same thing that's going on here? It's going to people in the bureaucracy to get more and more money? That's what it seems like. And you're telling me it's going to fix all of these things, but we're already giving you a lot of money.
I think your point is very clear, and I have a quote here. This is from representative. His name's Josh Gottheimer. He's a representative up in North Jersey, and this is in connection with the lawsuit that New Jersey filed this past July, challenging this plan initially. And this is a direct quote, and I think this goes exactly to what you're saying. So just to echo your sentiment, he said, quote, "I want to thank our governor for punching back at a state that decided to use Jersey as their piggy bank to solve their years of criminal mismanagement at the MTA." And then he says also, quote, "If the MTA gets its way, trucks will be backed up here in North Jersey, billowing cancer-causing pollution into the lungs of our children." So I think exactly what you said, where he alleges it's just criminal mismanagement of the money that the MTA has had so long as it's existed. There's no reason why, in the entire existence of the Metropolitan Transportation Authority in New York City, one of the oldest cities in the country, that we need to be now in the year 2023, puffing up these rates to fund things that should have been happening for decades. I agree with him. I think it tends to lean towards a criminal mismanagement of money. You're paying bureaucracy. And it's very unfair that New York is going to essentially collect, their funds to do seemingly whatever they want with from the hardworking taxpayers of New Jersey. I think that New Jerseyans deserve better 100%, and the MTA should maybe do a little soul searching, get their budget in order, really prioritize their projects, come up with relative figures on what these things are going to cost. So we're not just blanket charging people who are trying to go to work every day, making their commute to earn money for their families more expensive. It seems like a gut punch to the people that make the commute into New York City every day, provide for their economy, and New York is just right now kind of like this blood-sucking leech, just taking every dollar that they can from these commuters any way that they can. It's disgraceful, honestly.
And you know what, Stephen? I think I couldn't have said it better than myself. And I do want to say that I have no problem if you want to say we want more people using public transportation. It's better for the environment. We think it's better for city culture, like whatever things you want to do. Like I'm cool with that. I'm cool with public transportation really being pushed heavily. And I want to be proud of the public transportation in the United States like we once were. The way to do that, though, isn't to force people's hand by charging them because guess what? Okay, you're charging them $15 to enter Lower Manhattan, right? So what are people going to do? They're just going to stop entering Lower Manhattan through that. They're going to start entering through public transportation. So what's the argument going to be? Well, we're just going to have to increase rates on public transportation because we're going to need more money because we need more infrastructure because we have more people using it and because you're not making as much money from your congestion tax because less people are using that congestion tax and it's cheaper to use public transportation, right? You're going to need to up that cost because you need to offset the money that you're now losing because you expected to get because people stopped using those means of transportation into that city, right? Okay. So you're going to raise the price somewhere. You're still going to gouge these people. My problem is you're already piling oodles upon oodles of cash in. Make public transportation something that's a more feasible option as is, a safer option as is, and something that people don't like walk into the subway with the immediate smell of urine and rats scurrying over their feet and it's just gross and grimy. But
I have one more thought on this. I'll leave you with
sure.
this. Two things actually. So I just ran the math real quick. Assuming that you're somebody who drives your car into Manhattan for work every day, and you got to pay this $15 every day, and you do that for an entire month, you can expect about a new expenditure of about $450 a month to pay that fee just to get in. So think about the impact that could have on a single person. But if that person's providing for a family, you're talking $500 just being sucked out of your available funds in a time where, I mean, this is not news to anybody that listens to this podcast, but things are expensive. Inflation is high. The cost of living has continued to rise for a very long time. So things like this, I think, offer more detriment than they do a benefit. And I agree with you. It should be more focused on, improving what we have, making it more accessible, and, less taking out of people's pockets. I think something that maybe we could talk about in the future, just very interesting, and maybe we could do a little comparison next week about this, but Hoboken was very recently in the news because they have this thing. It's called the Vision Zero plan. They have not had a single traffic death in Hoboken, which sits just across the Hudson from New York City, since 2017. And they've actually done some pretty interesting things in terms of city development, and city planning that have restructured the way that traffic works in Hoboken. It hasn't been a tremendous cost to taxpayers, and it's achieved those same objectives in terms of reducing the pollution, reducing traffic related fatalities. And you're talking about, a little sister city right across the Hudson that doesn't need to charge $15 an hour to do that. So I think my 2 points there are A, it's worth the comparison. Maybe we could check it out, talk about it next week. And B, it seems like things just get done better in New Jersey.
I think that's fair. I think that's a great place to end that. Look, Steve, we have a tight window today because of finals. So let's quickly play this. We'll give quick takes, and then maybe we can get back to this second story at a later date because I think it's an interesting one and one we should flesh out a little bit more. But this second story that we got today is what's going on over with Elon Musk on X and what he said to some advertisers about pulling from the program. And it was pretty provocative and salacious and led to a lot of headlines. And I'm just going to let the man speak for himself here.
You know that there's a public perception that, and you're clarifying this now, but there's a public perception that that was part of a apology tour, if you will. That this had been said online. There was all of the criticism. There was advertisers leaving. We talked to Bob Iger today.
I hope they stop.
You hope?
Don't advertise.
You don't want them to advertise?
No.
What do you mean?
If somebody's going to try to blackmail me with advertising, blackmail me with money, go yourself.
But
go yourself. Is that clear? I hope it is. Hey, Bob.
So I'm just going to leave it at that because, I mean, he goes on, he talks a little bit more, and if you want to watch the whole clip, it's up there. But I think that's a good place to sort of leave it for now. And I think it's okay. Like, do I love that this man is on there on national, talking to an audience and using that type of language? No, it's not my favorite thing. Like, I like a little bit of more decorum and decency in class, but like, look at the society that we live in. It's kind of gone the way of the dodo bird, right? But fine. But the overall point, I think, is so brilliant. And he goes on to say, like, the interviewer obviously is shocked, and he's like, but if you don't have advertising, like, X is going to cease to exist. And then Elon Musk is like, yep. And they're like, oh. And he's like, you're right. And then who's going to be blamed for that? And then and the interviewer's like, I don't know. He's like, the people that pulled their advertising. And who's going to be upset? And who is the world going to be mad at? Not me. They know what Twitter is. They're on it, right? Like, they're not going to be mad at me that I lost, advertisers for doing exactly what I said I was going to do. They're going to be mad at the advertisers for pulling. So it's going to be on them. And they're going to have to deal with the consequences of ruining X. Like, good luck with that. And Elon Musk doesn't care because he's a multi-billionaire. This is chump change to him, basically. And I think that that's what's so brilliant about what he's saying. He's like, you can't blackmail the richest man in the world with money and expect to win. I don't care.
Is true. And I happen to be a big fan of this. And this is similar to, I think we spoke about this, but Dana White, very recently did the same thing where he was on the Theo Von podcast. Theo Von was telling a story about how he had done an interview with Bobby Kennedy. And after the interview, Peloton, which was one of the sponsors of Theo Von's podcast, called and was like, hey, we don't agree with what he's saying. You need to take the podcast down. Dana White heard about this, and he starts going off, and he says the same thing. He says, F Peloton. He finds out that the Pelotons are what they have in all the UFC gyms. He calls the director of operations. The guy was standing right there, and he's like, we're done. Take Peloton out. Like, some people, again, like you could put whatever political persuasion you want behind it, and that's not the lens that I choose to view this from. I choose to view it as these are people, right, whether it's on a podcast or whether it's on X, that are trying to engage in the free form discussion of ideas, thoughts, and just sharing. And when a company, I have a particular problem when a company steps in. I have even more of a problem if it's the government, which was also happening on X. But if either one of those entities steps in and says, I don't like what you're saying, so we are going to blackmail you with money. We're either going to pull our funding so you can't afford to have these conversations anymore, or we're going to dump money into something, that's in opposition of you to shut you up. And I think it's very manipulative. And I think if we continue to allow corporations and advertisers to control content and discussions that people can have when they're trying to have free discussions of ideas, we are headed down a very dark road socially. I don't need to agree with everything that Elon Musk says. I don't need to agree with everything that Theo Von says or Bobby Kennedy says or whoever says, but I should be able to hear what they have to say. I should be able to engage in a discussion with them and try to understand, my fellow American, my fellow, brother, and my fellow person. I owe that to them. They owe that to me. And if a company steps in and, like we're seeing here, threatens to pull advertisings, quash these platforms that facilitate free discussion, I think it's a very dangerous place. So my hat's off to Elon Musk on this one for just standing there. I think Bob Iger was actually in the crowd, CEO of Disney, and that's why at the end when we cut it off, he said, "Hi, Bob." because he doesn't care. He bought the platform to facilitate the free flowing discussion of ideas in a time in American culture and politics where he thought that that was very important. Hats off to him. And I can't stress enough, I don't have to agree with what Elon Musk says, with what anybody says on X, but I think you should be able to say it. So long as you're not calling for the violence against somebody or calls to action that are going to lead to violence, I think you should be able to have free discussions about your ideas. And anybody who attempts to blackmail or put a stop to that with money, especially a corporation, especially a government, is just egregious and despicable in every possible sense of the word.
I completely agree. And what I respect so much about this action here is the fact of the matter is he's not like saying I'll sue them, I'll do X, Y, and Z. He's saying like let them do it. I don't care. It's not going to stop me from doing what I think is right. And I think that that's so important there because he's not trying to pull Big Brother in like help me government. They can't be doing this. He's like no, they're allowed to do it. 100%. You can try and blackmail, and it might work for Facebook. It might work on Mark Zuckerberg. It might work on, for whatever. It might work on Tim John's podcast, but it's not going to work on this podcast. You know what I mean? So it's like that idea. It's like you're allowed to do that, but you don't be shocked if I turn around and I say, I don't care. I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing. And I think that's what's so remarkable about it is that he knows that he could lose it all. And he is so clear visioned in saying like free speech is the right thing to do that it doesn't even, he's not going to lose any sleep at night. And I think that's admirable and respectable.
I agree with you.
Our window's up. I'll let you get your last point in, but then we'll have to say our goodbyes.
Perfect. Because you know what? I think my last point's great here. I think Elon Musk, again, I agree with everything that you said, is holding the line exactly the way that he should and can hold the line. And ultimately, at the end of the day, what this is all about, what it's about with, Theo Von and Peloton or Disney and X or insert whatever advertiser and whatever platform is, for some reason, some people don't want certain conversations to be had. That offends everything that I believe to be great about this country and the freedoms that we have here. And again, I will shamelessly plug it. I am so privileged and I'm always grateful that you and I have the opportunity to get here every week on this platform, and not have to worry about our conversations, being pulled which way, one way or the other, or limited in what we can discuss. And I think that's really important. And it's a privilege. It's an honor to do it with you every week. And I think we are fighting the same fight. We've been having these conversations for over half a decade at this point, you and I, in these public forums, trying to do our best to facilitate it. And, so it makes total sense that this move from Elon Musk is something that we would both support. And I'll also shamelessly plug, if you didn't see already, if you love the content that AJ and I put out, we now included our little Instagrams down here. So give us a follow Bridging the Gap, follow Jersey First, and engage in the free discussions with us, because that's what we do this for.
Absolutely. Couldn't have said it better myself. But like all good things, Stephen, this too must come to an end. And we will talk to you all next week. Have a lovely week, everyone. Wish Stephen and I luck. Wish Stephen luck on his first real law school final exam on Monday. I actually have one next Thursday. So pre-recording, I'll have been taking a final. So next week, I'll let you know how it goes. See you guys.